Do they have a right not to have a 6'2" man who is a serial rapist put in as their cellmate? Do those women have a right to that?
Every person who's incarcerated has the right to be safe in their space.
But you didn't think so.
When we talk about the transgender agenda and how it affects our schools and women's sports and other various aspects of our culture, whether you're going to get fired for using the wrong pronoun, we often overlook one very important aspect of this, and that has to do with women's prisons. It's been a major, major safety issue for women who are incarcerated when they find themselves in intimate locations with biological men. Now, this bubbled up to the top of the news cycle this week as Senator Ted Cruz, in a confirmation hearing for a judge, confronted the judge over what she has done with regard to putting very dangerous men in prison with women. Take a look at this.
This case involves a male defendant who raped a 9-year-old boy, raped a 17-year-old girl. Was he guilty of that?
I hope so, because she pled guilty to it.
He was a he when he did this.
That's correct.
1 year after being released again, he was convicted of having child pornography. Is that correct?
Abhorrent conduct.
Okay. And this individual, 6'2", biologically a man. A minute ago, you said this individual was, quote, I wrote it down, sober and entirely a female. That phrase struck me as remarkable. Did this individual have male genitalia?
Yes.
So you took a 6'2" serial rapist, serial child rapist with male genitalia, and he said, I'd like to be in a women's prison. And your answer was, that sounds great to me. Let me ask you something. The other women in that prison, do they have any rights?
Is that a question you're
Yes,
asking me?
the other women in that prison, do they have any rights?
Of course.
Do they have the right not to have a 6'2" man who is a repeat serial rapist put in as their cellmate?
Senator Cruz, I considered the facts presented to me, and I reached a decision
I asked you a
based on what
question.
the law
I asked
is.
you a question. Do they have a right not to have a 6'2" man who is a serial rapist put in as their cellmate? Do those women have a right to that?
Every person who's incarcerated has the right to be safe in their space.
But you didn't think so. You didn't think so.
Julie Gunlock, Independent Women's Forum, is all over this issue when it comes to children being mutilated and convinced to do so by doctors or by school administrators. And certainly you've been in the forefront of saving women's sports and the Title IX rewrite. But what about this issue? What about the safety of women in prison?
This makes me so mad. It's hard for me to keep my composure here because I am so disgusted by what this judge did, and I'm so grateful to Ted Cruz for calling her out. I do want to make a plug. IWF has been following this very closely, and my colleague Kelsey Bowler has been doing a series of documentaries. This one, and particularly on women's prisons and what's going on when they allow biological males, intact biological males, into these women's prisons. That documentary series is called Cruel and Unusual Punishment, and that is perfectly titled because what they are doing to women who have a right to safety, even if they are convicted of a crime, these women have a right to safety and to not being raped by biological males who are sometimes cellmates with these women. It is absolutely horrifying, and I'm sorry. I know this is a three-person panel, but where are the women's groups? Where are the feminist organizations? I mean, IWF is all over this, but where are these traditional women, these sort of mainstream women's groups? They're silent. Where are the feminists? They're silent. I mean, they're so wound up about a flag being in someone's yard, but they don't focus on women being raped in prison by biological males who were put there by judges.
Well said, and never apologize for being passionate about an issue like this. That's why you're here. Chris, there's also something so unnerving about this judge insisting on using the she pronoun when hearing about what this horrible man did.
It's pit of hell stuff, and it's really, it's central to the argument that I think people are trying to inflict on our children, a godless society where ultimately there is no such thing as a creator, and you can it's a jump ball when you're born what you want to be. And if you change your mind later, so be it. We're careening, of course, toward that, starting at a very, very young age, surgically altering kids. We know that's a multi-billion dollar industry. So perpetuating this lie not only has real world consequences for women in prisons, women in locker rooms, women on sports teams. This goes right to the heart of our culture, a godless culture with no creator. And if you can eliminate that, then in God we trust. Who? God who?
Andy, when you see a sitting senator have to even make this argument, I don't know about your membership at AMAC, but I watch this and I think, why are we even having to have this conversation? How did this happen so quickly in our society that you have to make the case for not putting a 6'2" male rapist in a prison with women?
Larry, this is a huge issue for our members. They have made it very clear where they stand on the transgender issue, and they fear for their grandchildren. I mean, how can you equate transgenderism to senior citizens? Well, I'll connect those dots for you. Our members are concerned about what their children are being taught in school, and they're concerned about the grooming that's going on with regard to transgenderism, as well as the mutilating surgeries that are sometimes taking place without parental consent. We're on the record as supporting bills and helping to get legislation passed in states like Ohio and Tennessee, working on legislation in Louisiana that specifically addresses women's safe spaces, locker rooms, changing areas, and yes, prisons and battered women's shelters. So Louisiana's on the right track. Should this legislation pass, and it's got great bipartisan support, it would serve as a model on the federal level.
Chris, there's also an interesting aspect of this where we feel like we elect a president and that's going to take care of everything. Maybe our senators, maybe our governor. But look at the power judges have. And we often ignore that. We don't pay attention, especially conservatives. The left, they get it. They know the kind of power judges have, and that's why they get involved here. It's stunning to learn that this judge was able to do this without any real oversight.
Yeah, this is again, it's not to be redundant. It is a cultural issue, and it is one no election is going to fix. And it's why, in my estimation, not to bring up sort of an irrelevant point, but it's a broader point, which is, the Harrison Butker commencement speech of a couple of weeks ago. Why was that met with such visceral hatred? It's because it's telling hard truths. It's standing up to secular culture, staring it in the face and saying, no, that's not true. Here's what's true, and we're not backing off it. That causes hissing and shrieking and writhing. And what we must all do, it's not about elections, it's about a culture, wresting this madness away and taking back control of a sane, truthful conversation. And every one of us can do it, whether you're a kicker, whether you're a talk show host, whether you're a homemaker, or president of the United States. We're all duty bound to take the wheel back.
Julie, I'm going to let you have the last word on this one because we're all sort of using the same language, culture. They use this term culture war, I think, to scare some voters. It's like, oh yeah, I'm fiscally conservative. I don't want high taxes. I want a strong economy, but I don't like getting messy with all those culture war things. Look at what's happened as we've sort of looked away from the culture war. If we're one of those, Paul Ryan green eye shade conservatives.
Yeah, that's why they always say it's book banning. But they don't show the books, and that's really important. And I think, I have some friends that are sort of non-political, and she brought that up to me, and I showed her the pictures, and she was so stunned. But to her, and I asked her about that, and she said, well, all I've heard was it was book banning. All I've heard is it was book banning. And this is how they win these culture wars. They keep people in the dark. They tell half truths. They never really show the evidence. They kind of skirt around it, and they change words. They change the definition of words. Or in the case of women, they claim there really is no definition. So I think it's really, really important to be vocal about this stuff, to be out there. And I'm really glad to see that a lot of Republicans are not shying away from these issues.
Yeah, and I'll say it one more time. I say it often, and it needs to be repeated. Sure, call it a culture war. We didn't start the culture war,
That's right.
but we're definitely going to fight in it now that it's engaged, and ultimately we will win. We've got God on our side.